Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk about something that will be an extension from the second drawing lesson that I did, which is 1-point perspective. So we touched on the second lesson a little bit with our cube, but 1-point perspective is something that is really interesting to think about for how reality appears to us. And again, this isn't what is going to make you, the best artist or the most creative. It's just a technique to help you depict things realistically if that's something that you want to do. And also I think drawing realistically helps you to be able to understand the world around you. So that's one of the most interesting things I think about being able to draw realistically. So there's a couple of different things that we'll notice with 1-point perspective. There's the first thing that we're going to do is draw a horizon line. So if you've been, you're on the beach, imagine being at the beach right now. None of us are. Imagine the horizon line where you see the water meeting the sky, and that's the horizon line. And then there's a vanishing point, which we imagine being right on the horizon line, and we call it the vanishing point. I like to imagine a bunch of boats floating away from me, and they're obviously not running into, well, not but they're not running into each other, but if they get far enough away from you, they look like they're all going right into each other and disappearing. So think of that when you're thinking about horizon line and vanishing point. Now, a lot of times, like how we all are right now, I assume, inside, you're not seeing the vanishing point or the horizon line. But that doesn't mean that they're not still existing, that they're not still affecting what you are seeing. So one of the best examples of that is if you have a wood floor or a tile floor or something that has vertical lines, where you can imagine how they, just pay attention to how they look as they get further away from you. And then the wall is basically just obstructing where that vanishing point is happening. So if you were to just imagine your wood floor or your tile floor just continuing to go past that wall, and what would that look like? So another great example is if you've looked at a railroad and how that goes into the distance. So what we're going to first start with, our materials are the same as we've previously worked with. Get a number 2, or I have a woodless pencil, but no different than not that big of a difference from your number 2 pencil. And then some just regular paper. I have just computer paper. And believe it or not, I don't know where my ruler is. So if you're like me and don't have a ruler, just fold a piece of paper in half and use that as your ruler, okay? So how we're gonna start is we're going to do a horizon line, which is just gonna be a horizontal line across your page. And horizontal is this way, vertical this way. So one this way across the page. Okay, so everybody has that. And then the vanishing point doesn't have to be right in the center of your line, but I'm gonna make it pretty central. Okay, so there's my vanishing point. Okay, and then the next thing, we're gonna make sort of an upside down V, so like this from the vanishing point. I have that, right? And I think one of the easiest ways to first imagine this is to imagine that it's a railroad. Okay, so we're going to do that first. And for the rails, I'm making basically another line that goes from the vanishing point and then about, you know, half a centimeter or half an inch apart from that. So I'm going to connect here to here, this point to here. Okay, and then I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I put a little point right there, and then I'm gonna connect that point to the vanishing point again, okay? Okay, and then, so now you should have something where all lines are connecting to this point, the vanishing point, and then all of these lines should be, there should be a little bit of space, okay, in between. And so now I'm gonna color in this vacant space right there. Okay, so now you guys should have something that looks like that, okay? Now, we're going to make a train track, just so we get a sense of this. But what I want you guys to do is kind of like how when we did our grayscale, you started out putting a lot of pressure and then less pressure towards the lighter one. So this is similar, only with space. So we're gonna start out with making the space between the tracks are going to be pretty wide. So the closer they are to us, the more space it's gonna appear on the paper. So when we first start out, there's, you know, from here to the edge of the paper is kind of a lot, you know, it's kind of a fair amount of space. I think I've got, you know, about a ring fingernail worth, okay? So the next line that we do is gonna be almost that much, but not quite that much space. Okay, and then the same thing, I'm pretty much imagining that it's like a centimeter less. I mean, just a very small amount less each time. And if you want, I think I'm gonna make these a little thicker. So if you want to do that, you can, meaning the line's a little bit thicker, I'm sorry. So you're just pressing a little bit harder. Okay, and I'm really just eyeballing that it's, you know, slightly closer together. Maybe like a centimeter. You guys can see what I've done so far. You see? Okay. All right, so here, see how they're getting closer together. And something else I want to talk about while we're thinking about things that get further away. We won't really cover this in much detail today, but just something to pay attention to, that as things get further away from you, they will also get blurrier, less detail, almost like they're behind a foggy shower glass or something. The colors will be less vibrant, and just more like atmospheric. So if you are, when you get to the point where you're not just thinking about perspective, and you're also incorporating color and painting and things like that, then the realism of understanding how that comes into play can also be really important. But I'm telling you this now so that you can kind of imagine in your mind how, if this was a painting, how you would change how distinct the color was. Okay. So see how they keep just getting closer and closer? And if you're like me, you might overdraw a little bit, and that's fine. You can go back and erase that when you're done. Okay, so I drew them all the way to the back there. Okay, so we're imagining that this is our railroad. So if I was being really particular about what I just told you about, atmospheric, getting less detailed and everything, I would probably like erase a little bit of the definition of how dark I've made the lines. So not totally erasing, but just moving a little bit of the pigment. So do you see how that even looks more real? Because you see how it gets like lighter, and we can do that a little bit. Take some of this away too. And I want to say, so don't stress if you can't, if you don't have this kind of eraser, but if you plan on continuing with this class, something that I would say might be worth investing in, that you can probably just get online, is a kneaded eraser. And they're gray. What's so wonderful about them is that they're self-cleansing. So as you pull it apart, it just cleans itself. So you can pretty much use it forever. And they're sort of like putty, so it's very soothing. So that's my favorite kind of eraser. So, and woodless pencils I like too, just because, you can, you're not wasting a tree. And there's more to draw with. So this is what the Kneaded Eraser looks like. It's also very good for when we start doing more with hands and like when we start focusing on drawing the figure and stuff. Like these two things are going to be really great for you. Okay, so then the next thing that I'm gonna do, and I know not all places have telephone poles now or anymore, but particularly if you're going out into the country, you're probably going to see this quite a bit. It certainly was where I grew up. So something that you can do to help with that, we're gonna draw sort of a guideline where it's gonna be, I'm gonna call it like, it's not really a V. It's I mean, it is a V, but we're gonna connect our vanishing point to the top corners of the paper, just as like a guideline. And don't push super hard because we're just using this as like a guideline. Okay, so what we've done there, we just created a guideline. So that is what we're gonna think of as like the top of if there's gonna be like a telephone pole there, okay? Okay, and then after we have those guidelines at the top, I'm just gonna draw another sort of guideline that is gonna be from our vanishing point to about like 3/4 of an inch away from the edge of our railroad on either side. And this is another guideline. So when I say guideline, it's something that we're probably going to erase, but that's just kind of showing us where something that we're drawing is going. Okay. Okay, so now we have our guidelines here and our guideline there. So the next thing that we're gonna do, similar to how we had more space at the beginning of the railroad and then less space, we're gonna do that here, where we're gonna draw from the bottom guideline to the top guideline a vertical line. So when I say vertical, it means that it should be a perpendicular and like right angle to this paper, to the edge of the paper, okay? So and so for those of you that don't know, a right angle is 90 degrees, and that is just this angle, so like the edge of a paper. And so one really useful strategy for if you're trying to make a horizontal or parallel, horizontal, vertical lines, like for example what I just did, I made sure that this paper, my ruler paper, is lining up to the top of this the drawing paper, and then I drew art with the edge there, so I know that it's actually a 90-degree angle coming down. So we're going to continue doing lines like that through the two guidelines. Like it doesn't have to be, but let's do like 5 on each side. And again, they should be closer together the closer you get to the vantage point, okay? Okay, just kidding. I'm actually making like 7 or 8. It kind of depends on how your freeform spacing works out. And then we can make, so here's what it looks like on one side so far. And then we can make that, you know, a little bit thicker if you want. And I'll show you, I'm actually just gonna draw it. And maybe I won't do all of them. So you see how we're starting to see what it looks like as we go back. So I may actually not do all of the, and like if you're doing the guidelines and you don't want to do, you know, everything, I chose to just do 4 because I thought that looks better for what is going on with my drawing here. And then I'm probably just going to erase the rest of these lines. So I'll show you what that looks like. Except for the horizon line. I'm leaving the horizon line. So there you go. Now you can start to see how that, you know, has quite a bit of depth. So for my other side, I'm kind of just freeform guessing it, the other side. So there's my other side. So what I'm going to do now is the same kind of thing that I was talking about with the horizon line, or the vanishing point for the tracks. I'm gonna make the closer, or sorry, the farther away poles not quite so dark, not quite so distinct. So I'm going to use the Kneaded Eraser to make it just like a little bit more light in color, a little bit less distinct. Okay, so see how that ends up looking like very much 3-dimensional, and to me it just really makes such a huge difference to have it slightly blurrier and not quite as dark that's further in the distance. So you can also do this with a room, a tile floor. You know, the main thing is starting with that vantage point, but this kind of just gives you an idea of, because you're able to still see where the vanishing point is. So I hope you guys liked this lesson, and let me know if you have other ideas of what you would like to learn, and I will see you all soon. You can DM me or you can send an email to hello@carrieable.com. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope everybody is safe and healthy, and have a wonderful evening.